Throughout history, there have been ups and downs. Things that now, in a classroom environment, we can agree on are good things, or genocides. Today, we turn that on its head. Today we're ranking things based on opinion, and we're doing it in the form of lists. The attack on Pearl Harbor. Many died as the Japanese let their calculated attack on the harbor fly. The planes and battleships of the US Navy were destroyed, and lives were lost. Foolishly, every plane they owned was brought out in the open days prior in anticipation of an attack, worsening the damage. Only around 2,400 people died, however. The attacks on September 11th. We all know what happened, and for those that lived through it, it must be hard to let go of such a grudge. Many people died in the attacks on 9/11, including those in the towers, the brave souls who took back Flight 93, and the officers and firefighters that died helping others. Nagasaki, a bombing done by America. Between 60,000 and 80,000 people, civilians, were killed. And while it did solidify the win for the war, it could be argued to be a bit too excessive. Hiroshima, another bombing done by America. Between 90,000 and 146,000 people were killed, making it worse than Nagasaki by a long shot. The massacre in Okinawa. During World War II, the Japanese soldiers and Okinawan conscripts defended Okinawa, but them and 150,000 civilians were massacred. An additional 70,000 soldiers were killed. This event left many soldiers traumatized after being ordered to carry out the massacre, and the loss of lives is massive. European colonization of America. When America was being colonized, the Europeans had an obstacle in their eyes. That obstacle, quote-unquote, was the native people. The natives fought for their land, but were no match for the advanced weapons of the Europeans. Spanish colonization of America. Christopher Columbus was sailing out to India, but he landed in America instead. The repercussions to this day are that it's a struggle for our parents to call them Native Americans instead of Indians, because of the major misconception. That, however, wasn't the only travesty Columbus was responsible for. He also betrayed the natives after they welcomed him and his men as if they were gods. He enslaved them, forcing them to search for gold. When they didn't reach the quota, he'd cut their hands off, leaving them for dead. King Leopold II wanted the Congo when he got the chance. Being a sad little man, he wanted power, and he enacted his fantasies in the Congo. Rather than colonizing by education and funding, he forced the people to work too. He too would remove the hands of underperforming workers. There are photos of parents holding their children's hands, but not in the way that you'd hope. Children too were not exempt, and their hands were taken off their arms. Leopold made the people of the Congo enact punishment on their neighbors too, via the force publique. Horribly enough, this was only 1885, not even a century and a half ago. The rape of Nanking. The most depraved, inhumane display of brutality ever carried out by man, in my opinion. The Japanese massacred 150,000 male war prisoners, 50,000 male citizens, and raped at least 20,000 innocent women, commonly mutilating or killing them in the process. At least 200,000 deaths total. Children were murdered too, without a care. The goal is to change Asia and educate the Chinese by killing them. The rest of the world was disgusted when they heard, yet nobody talks about the horrific atrocities committed in Nanking. The Holocaust was another horrific display of inhumanity. I don't believe I have to explain the Holocaust, but to put it simply, it was the collection and slaughter of Jewish people under the rule of Adolf Hitler, or, as it's more known in a blanket statement, World War II, because the Holocaust was kind of the big thing that caused the whole war. Alright, now we don't have to be as serious. Now that we've finished it up with that more serious section, it's time for the top 10 historical adaptations. I'll be ranking them based on accuracy and the quality. The proper historical piece should be accurate, sure, but it also needs to be well written, shot, and acted, and, additionally, a good soundtrack would not hurt, if applicable. At 10th place, we have Walk the Line, the 2005 movie about Johnny Cash. I felt this movie belonged somewhere on the list, but it's still a biopic, so I didn't feel right putting it that high. If you've seen Walk the Line, you know it's a love story about Johnny Cash and June Carter. Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon play the couple, and the movie has a lot of songs recorded by the cast. Powerful scenes like Johnny Cash performing Cocaine Blues at Folsom Prison and Johnny's recovery from his drug abuse litter the movie, so much so that it, in combination with the movie Ray, spawned a satire, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, in which John C. Reilly pokes fun at both movies and their tropes and biopics as a whole. 9th place goes to Like a Dragon Ishin. This is a video game and a long-running franchise I've put a lot of time into, but what this game does with its story is a great historical fiction, spiced up with action and comedy following Sakamoto Ryoma. The game mixes absurd side content with crazy set pieces and characters portrayed by their main series counterparts. Sakamoto Ryoma is the face and voice of Kazuma Kiryu, the main protagonist of the Like a Dragon series. You'll join him in his 4 fighting styles, as he travels to Kyo to avenge his father figure and stop his brother, Takechi Henpeta, who believes they need to move on from their father's death and climb to power. What you're seeing on screen is just a taste of the gameplay. It's actually bonkers. Also, there's a fun little side quest where an American comes in and is like, open up. There's also a few other references to The Last Samurai and other samurai media. I've never played Ghost of Tsushima, but Like a Dragon Ishin makes me feel like I won't ever have to. 8th place is Of Mice and Men, which might be a controversial take, but I can assure you it's a great look at treatment of women, black men, and the people with disabilities in the 1900s, specifically the Great Depression. I've never seen the movies they've made out of it, but Lenny as a character is a well-written symbol of a childlike innocence in contrast to strength, while Crooks is a great example of racism, being a good person with years of experience being tucked away in a shed and shamed, and Curly's wife being an image of privilege, objectification, and the mistreatment of women. Besides that, George and Lenny are a likable duo, which makes the quick ending all that more heartbreaking. It's also a period piece of the Great Depression, with Lenny having been taken away by George at Lenny's aunt's request. The ending, like I said, is heartbreaking, with a spoiler alert, George mercy killing Lenny to prevent the horrible things they do to him otherwise, after Lenny accidentally killed Curly's wife. A kaboom. 7th place goes to The Untouchables. The Untouchables is like a mafia versus militia film that follows the takedown of Al Capone. It gives light to Capone as a person and is a good story that gives face to the usually overlooked group of people that worked hard to take down Capone, as it also sheds light on how interconnected the mafia was with the police before Capone's takedown. 6th place goes to Red Dead Redemption 2, the yeehaw cowboy game set in 1899 and the early 1900s. The game is really a historical period piece. It lets you take the reins in the story of Arthur Morgan. Arthur is a stone-cold cowboy from the start, without a merciful bone in his body. As you continue along, however, you learn that this rough and tough cowboy had his wife and son taken from him without any chance for revenge, and he's really a much kinder person on the inside with a dark past and a sad story. The game lets you influence Arthur's story too, with his brutality and decisions affecting the outcome of various things. Being a good person even lets you have a more heartfelt ending, whereas if you played evil, then you'd be met with a brutal ending for Arthur. 5th place goes to Hidden Figures, the movie about black women that aided the space race. It's a great story of the 3, as they helped in 3 different departments and proved to be essential for NASA in getting a man on the moon, during a time where women, and more broadly black people, weren't accepted in most jobs. They're girl bosses. LA Confidential, the movie, not the book, is a really good movie, minus Kevin Spacey. If you overlook that though, you can see how great it is. The film follows 3 separate cops, one being the up-and-coming type, another being a burnout brute, and the last being a TV detective. Together, they solve a police corruption plot, and along the way, there's thrilling shootouts, deaths, affairs, exposés, and more. It's got great world building and paints Los Angeles as a dirty, flawed city, which perfectly illustrates the situation of Hollywood in the 1950s that the movies weren't showing you. 3rd place goes to the adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is absolutely perfect. I don't say this lightly, as I don't say it often, but Atticus Finch is my favorite character in a novel. To Kill a Mockingbird follows a group of kids and sometimes their dad, who's a lawyer, when he takes on a case during the Great Depression where a black man has been accused of sexually assaulting a white woman. The movie is my preferred version, although both are great. It's just better to see what happens, in my opinion, and I saw it live on stage once. The trial scene is always tense, no matter how many times you've watched it. And the acting is perfect for being led by 3 kids. It also has just such a good world building of the town around the kids, with such little small details being able to fill up such a movie that's not even that long. It's like 2 hours, I think. Coming in at the second to last spot, we got Saving Private Ryan. It's a very hard film to watch, known most for the opening scene. The movie is a historical fiction, meaning they made it up, but with historical setting in mind. It stars Tom Hanks and Matt Damon, arguably in the latter's most iconic role besides maybe Good Will Hunting and Jason Bourne. The plot follows a squad as they travel the countryside along Normandy to get a kid named Ryan so he can be sent back to his mom, given all of his siblings died in warfare. It's truly an amazing film, and if you somehow haven't seen it, you should probably get on that. At number 1, we've got Schindler's List. It's a horrific experience, though you can't take your eyes off of it. The story of Oskar Schindler is that of a businessman, attempting to be oblivious to the ongoing atrocities around him until it all becomes too real to bear. Schindler, who had been neglectful before, only helping a handful of encamped Jewish people, turns things around and begins to hire hundreds of Jewish people, keeping them in his factory, having them make faulty weapons for the Nazis, and imploring the Jewish people to observe the Sabbath and observe other traditions. In the end, Schindler had saved 1,200 people from the mass Nazi killing, and is quietly renowned as a hero. Moving forward, let's talk about names. There are some really cool names in history, and the following 10 are my favorites. In order to not make this too long, I'll fly through it with short explanations why. Karl Marx. His name is very simple, but very strict sounding. Karl with a K is very menacing, as opposed to Karl with a C. Plus, Marx makes it sound like he's marking something or writing something, to which I say, the Communist Manifesto. Nelson Mandela. He's a cool guy, spent years in prison, and became president of South Africa too. Nelson is a very boring name, but Mandela sounds mysterious. The name means like creator of the council, which is cool. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a great person, leader of the civil rights movement, and having King in your name automatically grants you some sort of power. Xi Jinping. This may sound like a weird one, but the X is one of the most underrated letters, and such a name is just cool. I'm not sure how to describe it, but for me, it's always had a James Bond kind of vibe to me. Mansa Musa. I had this at number 1, but I'm pretty sure Cody stole it from me, so I'll have to bludgeon him to death with a mud brick later. But regardless, Mansa Musa. Alliteration. Man is in his first name, which is really manly. Both names end with that sa sound. It sounds sick, and it fits the eccentric type of guy who was throwing blocks of gold at people in Egypt. Barack Obama. Gotta say, since I saw him at a rally, I liked him. He's chill, funny, and he has cool uncle vibes. Plus, he was the first black president of the United States, and his name is Barack Obama, which is pretty, only he'd tell us his last name. Rasputin. I don't remember his full name, nor do I care enough to look it up. It's better without the other part. He was a healer in real life, and a monk who walked across Russia for years, before getting poisoned, stabbed, shot, and still living with only drowning being able to kill him. That's a rumor, but still. John F. Kennedy. He has a cool name. He was also the president, and he was a pretty interesting dude. Muhammad Ali. Doesn't matter which one. Both are cool. The name is just really awesome. Muhammad is like a twisty kind of name. It goes this way and then that way. It's like Mu and then Ham. And it's like, okay, what next? And then just Ad. And it like quickly closes. And Ali is very pretty. It paints him kind of like a gentle giant, which for the boxer might have been kind of fitting. Gavrilo Princip. The man who started the First World War, and by extension the Second as well. He was just a young adult when he accidentally ran into the guy after failing to assassinate the guy, and then finished the job, failed to poison himself, and rotted in prison. He also had a name that just kind of rolls off the tongue. It sounds very mysterious, just kind of like who he was. Thank you for watching.